Good morning, everyone. Happy to have you all here in person and virtually, members of the public, and also welcome members of the board. This is the Pointing of the Mountain State Land Authority Board meeting. Scheduled date and time today. My name is Lowry Snow. I'm one of the co-chairs. Also present is Representative Jordan Tusher, the other chair, and also members of the board who are here in person, some, and also others who are joining us virtually. So we welcome you here. The January meeting, this is the January meeting. We hope you had a nice holiday break and a good start of the 2025 year. I know that we are very optimistic about the plans for the Point in 2025. Since our last meeting, we hosted the first groundbreaking event at the Point, and we should point out that it was, in my opinion, one of the more successful events we've held. Thank you to staff of the Point and also Muriel and her team. Muriel, you're here, right? And great event, great planning, a great program. And one of the best parts was that I got to actually run a backhoe. I've never been able to do that before. And that was just a tremendous event. The event recognized the start of construction on Porter Rockwell Boulevard. This is a significant event. The main transportation artery, which provides a new north-south connection through previously isolated area. This will connect Draper at Bangor Highway to Bluffdale at 146,000 south through the Point. More importantly, this paves the way for vertical construction in the coming years as the Point takes shape as Utah's innovative community. So we are now at that part in the agenda where we take public comment. As we say at the beginning of every one of our meetings, we are reminded that this is a public project. We take that seriously. We value input from residents. And in fact, we've already taken something like 7,000 points of view that have been shared to us by residents, giving us feedback, and that has guided our planning thus far. We welcome public comments as long as it follows the procedure. So with that, I'm going to ask, first of all, anyone here present in the room that would like to make a public comment? Not seeing any hands and no one moving forward. Let me go to our tech staff and ask if anyone is online requesting comment. Okay, with that, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. We welcome again Representative Ariel DeFay. Ariel, right there, right to my left. It's now official, Ariel, as our one of the newest representatives in the House of Representatives, and she has been appointed by House Speaker Mike Schultz as his official appointment on the Point of the Mountain Land Authority. So we invite you now, Ariel, if you would stand, and Cece, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, and you can administer the oath to Representative DeFay. Why don't you come on up here, Cece, in front of the whole world? We'd like that. So. Wait just a second. Someone needs to get a picture. Okay. All right. Okay. This needs to be recorded for your posterity, Representative. So.
Of my office with the
Good, Mike.
About now.
Well, welcome again, Representative, and now officially a member of the board. Can't tell you how pleased we are to have you here and part of our work. Senator Stevenson has asked for a moment.
I would just like to disclose that Representative DeFay is my representative and I am her senator. So just so there's no conflict of interest there.
Okay. Well, I call that an unholy alliance, but nevertheless, we're glad to have both of you as active members of the board. So the next item on the agenda is to consider the minutes that have been made available to us of our December 10th, 2024 board meeting. The chair would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Senator Ramsey, is that your motion? I'm sorry, Mayor Ramsey. That could have been prophetic. I don't know.
That wasn't a promotion.
Listen, someday you'll all be old too, so
He's been a mayor.
I-
That's right. That's what I say. That wasn't a promotion.
we're all friends. Let me try again. Mayor Ramsey, is that your motion? Motion is made, and do I have a second? Second by the other mayor, Mayor Walker, a member of our commission. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously, and the minutes are approved accordingly. Thanks, CC, again for all you do to make those available to us each meeting. Third item on the agenda is to hear from Don Willie, Director of Operations. We recognize the trust placed by the public in our office, in our staff, to ensure that land authority funds are appropriated and spent in a manner consistent with the approved budget and according to law. We appreciate the work of our Finance Committee, April Cooper, our Director, Mike Ombre, in reviewing our financial statements to ensure they are in accordance with the board-approved budget. So with that, Don, we'll recognize you to share the December 2024 financials.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pleased to report healthy financials this month. At the end of December, we should be at 50% of our budget remaining. So we've hit our halfway mark through our fiscal year. As you can see on the far right column, you can see where we stand percentage-wise remaining in each of our line item categories. We've had a few over the last 6 months that we've been we spent a little bit or more upfront, and that percent was higher with the expectation that it would even out throughout the fiscal year. I'm pleased to report that those categories have now equalized, and we are either on target or doing really well. So you can see many of the categories we still have quite a bit of budget left, and that we are doing everything we can to protect those taxpayer dollars and spend them with great prudence. We have one category that is running a little bit higher than normal. This is just due to staff transitions and technology that's necessary to onboard employees in those transition. And so we are just running a little high on our 6,500 data processing charges. That's our bill that we get from the State Department of Technology. So we do anticipate that to equalize. We may need to add a little bit of funds to that as we get to the end of the fiscal year, but we'll be pretty close to on budget for that at this time is what we would expect. Aside from that, all other categories are looking healthy. And again, we're doing everything we can to ensure that we're spending these dollars wisely, conserving where possible, but not compromising the effectiveness or the efficiencies of the land authority team.
Thank you, Don. Let me go to the other members of the Finance Committee, April and Mike, our director. Do either of you have any follow-up comments to those made by Don? April, is April with us electronically?
Yes, I'm on, Larry.
Okay.
No, it looks good. Dawn prepares them and sends them out, and been reviewing them, and everything looks in order. If we ever have any questions on any of the items, we're able to address and get the detail of it. So I feel comfortable with what's being presented here.
Thank you, April. Anything further, Mike?
Yeah, just one comment. I believe, I haven't been in these meetings for over a year now, but it seems that we're ahead of schedule with respect to the budget. I know you mentioned a couple of line items. Don and I met yesterday and went line item by line item, and I feel like we're doing really well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board about our financials? I don't see any requests to speak. I will say that we appreciate very much, Don, the work of you and the committee to keep track of our financials. And I think from my perspective, we're midway, and if I read these numbers correctly, we're looking really good. And we really appreciate your work and paying attention to detail. Thank you. The next, well, let me inquire before we move on, Don. This is on the agenda, apparently is an action item. Are you looking, or do we need to take any action on this at this point?
The board could approve the financial statements for the month.
Okay.
That'd be your discretion.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve these financial statements that are in front of us and have been presented by Don Willie, our Director of Operations. So moved by Mayor Walker. Do I have a second of that motion?
This is April. I'll second that.
Thank you, April. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2024 financials as presented to us. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks again, Don, for your
Thank you.
presentation and your work. Next item on the agenda, as then it's probably going to take some time, is the executive session. Utah Code 524205-1D permits the board to go into closed executive session only for purposes outlined in the statute. The topics to be addressed in agenda item 6 that we're talking about now is a project proposal to look at approving for discussion in executive excuse me, let me start again. The topics to be addressed in agenda item 6, a project proposal is approved for discussion in executive session for purposes of protecting the negotiating interests of the state and personnel. That's provided by statute. We now propose to go into closed executive session for those items. Chair would entertain a motion for us to move into executive session. It's been moved by Mayor Walker that we retire to executive session for those purposes. Do I have a second? Second. I'll take Mayor Ramsey second on that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All in favor of that motion, we'll place it now for vote. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. The chair rules that the motion passes unanimously, and as I understand it, JC, if that's the case, we don't need to take a roll call. Am I right? Is that correct? Thank you. All right. So with that, we now retire into executive session. Members of the public that are here or online, if we be patient, we may be a while, but we will be coming back into open session as we complete our work in executive session. Thank you. Did you have something, Mayor? Your lights on?
I guess. Where we go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hey, CC, are we staying here?
Well, Andrew Roberts.
Hello, folks. This is the board back in open session. We've completed our executive session and JC, I'm sorry, I don't always remember. Do we have to take another vote now to
No,
come?
you do
We
not.
don't.
No.
Okay. So the last item on our agenda is to review legislative changes that will be coming up this session. I think as most of us know, the 2025 general session is going to commence in a matter of days. And we've asked our legal counsel, J.C. Skinner, to provide an update on legislative matters that we anticipate coming up. In addition, JC will brief the board on legislative mandated disclosures that all board members are required to file annually. So that would be helpful too. JC, I believe your mic is on. We'll turn the time to you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I am sharing my screen. You all able to see that? And if so, I will try to actually make this a slideshow. There we go. All right. As Chair Snow mentioned, as you know, every year we have a bill that deals with point of the mountain legislative issues. Matter, of course, as an entity moving forward, we know we are constantly encountering kind of new scenarios and new issues. And so there's just an element of refining the process and refining the statute. And so as your staff, as your team, we keep a running list throughout the year as issues come up that we think that we need to address in the upcoming legislative session. This year, most of the items that we had identified and that we've talked with the team about are mostly technical issues. There are a couple of substantive issues. So I just want to walk those through with you all and make sure I can answer any questions. Right now, Senator Stevenson does have a bill file open to address these issues. And we've been working with the drafter, assuming this board is comfortable with all of these changes that will go forward. And Representative Tusher, Co-Chair Tusher, will be sponsoring that in the House. So that is our current plan. So just to highlight the issues, we will be dealing with what is currently called the annual assessment and making some adjustments to make that a privilege tax. This is our property tax equivalent there. These, I will get to this in more detail, but this, while it looks like a very substantive change, is really quite really a technical change. We'll be dealing with the distribution of that tax, which is a substantive issue here in the change. A couple of just cleanup items and updates to the statute. In a separate bill, we will be addressing alcohol licensing for the point. This one is not necessarily entirely in our hands, but should address the issues that we anticipate. And then we have contemplated, we're not sure how we're moving forward on this yet, but possibly addressing some budgetary intent language. So just to walk through those a little bit more in detail. Under Pombla's current statute, you'll all recall this, we, as state property, we are exempt from property tax. That is the way that plays. When we created our statute and created an ability to capture that property tax equivalent, we initially captured that and called that a fee in lieu of property tax. There are other areas in statute where that occurs. Last session, in relation to some current concerns from bond lawyers working with us and with TPP, we changed just the title of that to an annual assessment in function, form, and amount. It is exactly the same. This year, we are going to change that to a privilege tax. Again, in function, form, everything, it is the same. This is as a result of some concerns that were brought up by Salt Lake County in assessing and collecting and distributing. Privilege tax is something that they are very familiar with, and essentially a privilege tax is intended to capture the equivalent of a property tax on exempt state property where it is exempt from property tax, to make sure that it taxes any beneficial use of the property, which is what we will see here. So once we start development that is for-profit development, that will have a beneficial use and would be subject to privilege tax. This is an already existing section of code. This is nothing really significant. Again, in form, function, everything, it is the same. It's really just the name, and we'll make this much easier for Salt Lake County to administer. So we were happy to do that. Are there any questions on this item? Again, it looks like a big change. In function, it really is.
Questions for JC?
Okay.
Anyone online with a question? No.
All right.
Okay.
I will next move to the distribution. So I will know I have a chart listed here. This is currently a proposal, numbers that we are working with. We have been working over the last little while to come up with some interlocal agreements with our local taxing entities as to how we would reimburse them for services that they provide. Those have become really complicated and have been a little bit difficult, and we don't always have the best numbers for what their costs will be, nor what our revenue will be. And so looking at those, the current proposal is in lieu of doing direct interlocal agreements for the distribution, we would put this in statute and put in a distribution schedule that would hopefully help capture our need for revenue initially to develop infrastructure, but also recognize the need for Draper City and Salt Lake County in particular to make sure that they are being reimbursed for those services that they will be providing at the site. My understanding is that these are the numbers that we are currently talking about and working through and working with, but I wanted to give everyone a sense of what those are. So the proposal would be that we would actually write these into code so that it would designate that beginning, in 2025, we actually don't anticipate any revenue in 2025, but we will set that benchmark there. From 2025 to 2034, we would capture the entirety of that rate, but then we would incrementally return that portions of that back to the local entities. So that's the current proposal. Director Ambry, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that or if there are any questions.
No, I think that summarizes it. If there's any questions, we'll certainly field those.
Looks like Senator Stevenson has a question.
I don't have a question, but I do have, this is not unusual for us to go through a process where we have legislation tied with land use authorities on an annual basis. I've been in the legislature, I think I've served 15 sessions to date, and I've ran 14 MITA bills. And I've ran a bill almost every year for the Point of the Mountain, and also for our process we're doing with the inland port. And you tie that, and then we mentioned alcohol, and we tie alcohol. I've decided I'm the answer to, if you have land use authority, I'm the one-stop shop in the legislature. So, but
We're grateful to have your association.
well, they're very amazing because we have, for instance, we have this agreement with the local entities, and if you go out, you look at what we're doing with the port with Salt Lake City, we have the same process. Salt Lake City will be the provider of those services. So it's complicated, and there will be someone probably running a POMSLA bill and a point bill and this will, or the Point of the Mountain and the inland port bill and MITA bills. I would imagine we're 20 years out before we get this really totally settled. So they're changing, they're large. And then now we'll start into the process with the Fair Board and the Fair Park because they're the same type of entity, and yet they're all different. So a lot of fun. It's been kind of an interesting place for a farm boy from Layton to go. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. We're lucky, fortunate to have members of the legislature on our board who will help carry that legislation for us.
All right.
JC.
Okay. The next item that, and these really are cleanup issues. We are proposing that we repeal section 1159-305 of the Utah Code. Now, you may ask why. This is part of our statute. It has been in our statute in our section of code since the creation of POMSLA. But as you look at it, it's considering the recommendations of the Point of the Mountain Development Commission. This commission was operating in the lead up and to the decision as to what to do to this property, Representative Snow at the time, I believe, was also a member of that commission. That commission did a number of economic studies, made a number of recommendations and reports, et cetera. And as you can see in section 2 of this, they were instructed to, before November 30th of 2018, their board or our board was to make recommendations to the Legislative Management Committee concerning things related to this report. That was some time ago. We do have this report. That report was incorporated into the plans for the overall vision for this site. And so the recommendation that we have right now is just in an effort to clean up our statute to remove this particular section, since it's no longer an active part of our directive. So that would be our recommendation to you if everyone's okay with that. If there's any questions on this section.
I mentioned that JC and I talked about this action. And as you're right, as a former member of the Point of the Mountain Development Commission, in fact, I was chairing that. It makes sense that now that we're moving forward, that this section that we repeal this section. Thanks, JC. Any questions about that? Let me get you a mic there.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I don't have a question, just a comment. I agree that the time has come for that to be repealed. I think that's great. But I just want to say thank you, because not every member, and they probably won't all hear this, of the Point of the Mountain Development Commission is here with us now as part of this body. But there were a lot of folks that laid a lot of good foundational groundwork for this project to even happen, and did a lot of research and got a lot of public input. There was a lot that went into this. So I just want to express appreciation to everyone who was part of the Point of the Mountain Development Commission for their work and leading us to the opportunity that we've had now for the last 6.5 years to be doing this.
Thanks, Mayor. That means a lot. That was actually a process that took 2 to 3 years. Our consultant was Envision Utah, and we developed 2 reports, one preliminary and one final. And the final report that's still online reflects the work now that we are doing as POMSLA board. With recommendations that now finds its way into our work. And it's interesting, in that final analysis, it referred to what happens to the prison. This 600 acres would be a catalyst and for, in large measure, determine what's happened to the broader development area. And I think it's going to prove to be the case. Thanks, Mayor, for that. JC, back to you.
All right. Then we also just want to make a clarification, and this again, not very substantive, but just in an abundance of caution as we move forward. Currently, last year we made some change to make it clear that as we acquire any additional land, that it becomes part of the definition of the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, which is where you all have authority. So we wanted to make it clear that case. It's not that I know of any grand plans that you will have to acquire a lot of property. But for instance, there are, always going to be some little tweaks around the borders or some other things along those lines. So we just wanted to make it clear as we were looking back again at this, that whether it's the state or the authority that acquires that land, that it again falls into that definition. So again, just an abundance of caution. We thought it was probably okay, but we wanted to avoid any potential question going forward of the authority. So we are recommending just making that clarification there. Any questions on that one? Okay. And then just two final, these would be in a separate bill, but we have been working with Senator Stevenson, Representative Karen Peterson, who are kind of point people on alcohol legislation, as well as the of DABS, related to some proximity issues that we will anticipate in the central part of our development that may come up. This issue is actually not, I think we've been flagging it for a couple of years, but in the meantime, a lot of other folks have flagged this. So it's actually come to a position where we aren't the ones who are solving this, but we will benefit from that. My understanding, and Senator Stevenson, please feel free to chime in, but my understanding is that there are currently 2 proposals that will be looking at this. It will either be that our project or a portion of our project would be designated in what is in statute called a project area, which would exempt it from some proximity restrictions when it comes to alcohol licensing. So, distance from a library or something along those lines. This would allow us to have some restaurants along the Rivers to Range Trail and some things along those lines that we're looking at. The other proposal would, my understanding would be that municipalities would have the authority to essentially do some overlays where that same exemption would take place, but it would reside with the local municipalities. And in that instance, we would be included as a land use authority in that entity that would have the ability to do those overlays. So either of those we anticipate will meet our need. I don't know exactly which decision. My understanding is there's a meeting later today where this will be discussed. So just know this is something that we're tracking and that we're pushing. But will be in a separate bill, but that we will be monitoring for you and make sure that we proactively address this. Any questions on this one?
Just the other thing, we talked about this a little earlier, is that we put together a process last year where you could have an entertainment district that falls into a couple of blocks west of Gateway or west of City Creek. And that looks like it could be a process that we would use at least for the promenade area as soon as we have that defined. That would probably work with what we're doing also.
Thank you very much. And then the final issue is just ensuring this is actually a statutory issue, but we may look at maybe some in one of the budget bills, some intent language, just to make it clear that POMSLS funds can be used for any of our administrative and or project needs. And again, it's an abundance of caution type of a consideration. So those are the things that we are proposing. If there's any questions, I can answer them. And if not, I believe we'd like a motion to recommend that we recommend these changes.
Chair would consider a motion that these items be pursued as they've been explained to us by JC, that they be pursued and be placed into legislation this session. So moved by Mayor Ramsey.
I
Do
would second that.
Second by Senator Stevenson. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Not hearing any questions or comments or discussion, I'll place that for a vote. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. JC, thanks very much for your coverage of those issues and also for helping oversee that through the legislative process for us. Thank you.
Of course. And then the other item I was asked to address is you will be receiving from your team an updated disclosure. You all are required to do disclosures every year. We wanted to flag it, however, just so that you're all aware. As public officials, most of you are very accustomed to these disclosure forms. Last year, the Utah legislature did pass a statute that required a much more thorough disclosure form. So we have created a form for you all that will anticipate that. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out. We can help you address that. As point of the Mountain Board members, you have a separate disclosure requirement related to the proximity and your interests or ownership of any property in relation to that. So we've combined the statutory provisions from the general disclosure and the other piece into a single form. Half of this board is also what is called a designated individual, which are individuals who may live in that area and you're there because of that particular reason. So it makes sense that you would own some property or have interests in that area. In that instance, you just have to disclose what those are. So there's a separate form. Again, happy to walk anyone through that, but we just wanted to give you a little bit of alert when you get this much more complicated form than you've seen in the past. We just wanted to make sure that you could thank your fellow legislative elected members on this board for that particular form. And if there aren't any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, JC. What is our timeline or deadline by which those need to be completed, and who do they get returned to?
That's a really good question. I am not aware of a specific deadline. I think they just have to be done annually, but I'll verify that. If it changes, we'll put that in an
Okay.
email to do that. But they will, Dawn will be sending them to you. You'll return them to Dawn and he'll
Okay,
maintain those.
thanks. And Don, if you wouldn't mind help follow up to make sure we get those in so folks are current with the law. Thanks for that, JC, as well.
That's everything I have. Thank you.
What? I was just sitting here thinking, sometimes I think legislators, we don't understand well the KISS system, which is keep it simple, stupid. We miss out on that.
Yeah, I used to hear that a lot from the teachers. Yeah. So I'm sorry, do we have
Yeah, Tori's here.
Jefferson? Oh, Tori. Are you handling this next item on the agenda? Providing the USHE and Innovation Community update? Did I catch you by surprise? I didn't, that's not fair if, is that okay with you if we postpone it? Okay. All right. With Commissioner Moss, Representative Moss, you tell him that he needs to not have you carry that if he's not here. So, okay. All right. So with that, we're to the last item on the agenda. The chair would entertain, before we entertain that motion, let me thank every one of you who are here in present and as well as those online. There's been a tremendously important discussion that has occurred in executive session and otherwise. And the size and magnitude of this project requires that kind of engagement, especially if we're going to do it successfully. So sincerely thank you for your help today in engaging and for being here. So with that, the chair would entertain a final motion. Motion to adjourn by Troy Walker. Do I have a second? Second by Mayor Ramsey. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. We stand adjourned. Thanks again.
I'm gonna go spend the rest of the day on alcohol.
I got you. You see that outlined in blue?
Yep.